Oh, I needed an extra cup of coffee this morning to get ready. Today is going to be a heavy-duty day. It's supposed to rain. Not sure if it is, but I had two things I'd like to get done today. Number one, I'd like to get this sanded. Needs quite a bit more sanding and in prime. If the weather holds up, maybe even get it in white, but so far it looks like rain. Also, our lovely fender here, just checking that, it's been sitting under a heating vent, and it's, boy, that's just makes me very happy. Sooner or later we'll have this part in clear. And maybe if I have time, get the paint remover going on this, especially I was saving this for a rainy day that I couldn't go outside. But the first thing I want to do is get, and again, I always try to make up these schedules, try to get Steve's fairing sanded, and if nothing else, get it in prime. And this fairing needed a lot of work, a lot of reinforcements. Oh, and we also have the maintenance on the 750. I got tires to put on that, and oil change and filter, and we got plenty of work, that's for sure. This part of the job has come out so nice that I'm really really looking forward to seeing how this part is going to shape up, but it does need a lot of sanding. Now this piece I know is going to need a lot of work. So rather than do the paint removal part, I thought, well, it really isn't totally raining yet, so one of the efficiencies I could get, if this day plays out, I can get all this sanding done. If it's raining, I'll just wait for the next day to put that next coat of primer on, and this part really had a lot of fish eyes too. And if it isn't raining, well, maybe we'll get this in white. So we kind of plan out our day here. Now I'm starting off with some 220 grit rough. I'll finish it up with some 600 before I prime it. The main thing is, of all of these sanding things, is to get all the edges, all the corners, all of the areas where we had to do these repairs. And that wasn't, there's a lot of repairs on this part. But again, you can't buy these parts new, and realistically, I always say the ones you get off eBay are worse than the ones that you may as well go to war with the army you have. 220 is good just to knock down the high spots, but that final thing with the 600 is what will give us a nicer finish, of course. And I'm very concerned with this part because we did have fish eyes. Well, we had fish eyes on this whole project pretty much. Again, the whole routine is to soft block first, then do the whole thing by hand, and then we'll finish it up with the 600. But the most important thing is to have no sharp edges, where, especially around here where this can be a problem. All of these edges, I want to get them as radius as possible. And in a case like this part, there's just no substitute for a labor of love. It's just, you wish there was some way you could just minimize the labor, but there's no way that I know to do it. And anytime you try to cheat the system, you wind up paying later anyway, so what's the point? All the sanding done with the soft block, now it's time to take over. Again, we're still using 220 because this part really was not in great shape. Of course, that's what we do with everything we have, is try to take those parts that are not in great shape, and most of all get all these edges radius. You don't really see it on the video, but this is just, sometimes these things just go on for a lot longer than you think. But anytime you put in now, the final finish will look that much better, that's for sure. See, there's been a lot of Bondo work on this part, so even more reason to block sand out. As you see up here, you can see this has been repaired. In fact, I'll make sure we have a good repair on that if we need more reinforcement. But because this is a part that you're going to see also. Each time I go through the part, I find more little areas that are cracked. Found an area up here that had looked like it had some repair on. Oh, over here. We're going to be block sanding that out a little bit more. I'll put some thin CA in there, spread it apart, and then block sand back over it. But all the detailing I can do now just make for a nicer finish. And in the final analysis, I'm sure we'll be glad we did it. So if I spread that, now that repair came out really good. Now I can see that the areas where there's Bondo and where it's cracked down here, I want to block sand that out, get that as flat as possible. There's just so many little details to do on this, and this is really a good day to do them. But another big crack with this Bondo. This up here was a lot of work to get this flat. But we're almost done with the 220 now, then we'll pick up and do the whole part with 600. Now here's a significant thing. Here's one of the reasons this part, it came into the shop primed, but it was never really cleaned before it was primed, because this is grease. We haven't, somebody did an oil change inside the fairing here, but I'm going to try to get most of that. I'll get some simple green or some of that atomic stuff that they sell at Harbor Freight. But here's the problem with that. That winds up getting diluted and dissolved, and then what you wind up with is a ton of fish eyes. So we're going to try to clean most of that up if we can. There's a couple little spots where I saw cracks. I'm going to put some reinforcing in. This was way more work than I thought it would be, but I think we've upgraded the part quite a bit. And this is why I have always told people, if you're going to do any of this work, the first step is always to degrease everything. No matter what. It doesn't matter, simple green, atomic, you use laundry detergent. But if you don't degrease it, it's pay me now or pay me later. That crap all winds up in the final, and it's a mess. So, again, look at the stuff coming off of there. But we don't know the history of the part. We don't know who did this Bondo. We don't need to know either. We'll straighten out as much as we can. But this part is a true, this is the definition of a labor of love. And what I'm doing, I'm trying to take a piece of wood and make a brace. I guess up here is the best. So this part, let me show you, without the brace, is just a big rubber band. While we're working on it and doing final finishing and sanding, it'd be better if this would make it a lot solider. It's just an ordinary piece of balsa wood. I'll get some sheetrock screws, and this will make the finishing process a lot easier, that's for sure. Anytime you can have a handle on something, because this is a difficult part. At the end of painting it, you run out of places to hold it. Now the handle worked out great. This will allow me to, and it makes the part more stable now. Now I want to do a final detailing with dry sandpaper. This is 100 grit. And there's a couple spots on here I need to smooth out that I'm not real happy with. I'm doing it with a rubber glove. This is the spot. And it's usually where, I want to do this dry. This is usually where there's been repairs or extra Bondo. And sometimes while you're sanding wet, you just miss it. Like right here, that's a lot of body work here. Then I'm going to have to wipe this whole thing down with prep soil and see what the weather is doing out there before I plan out the next step on my day. There's a lot of body work up here. This fairing had so much body work. This might be the king of body work, this one right here. But we're going to get it as good as we can, that's for sure. This whole side's body work. There were some that Luciano had years ago that were pretty rough, we worked on. And we made them pretty nice. Again, the whole thing with this is it's just a labor of love. There's just no way, and you really have to do this by feel, especially when stuff is primed. After all that sanding, there's always a little spot you missed. Well, Karen checked the weather report. It's not supposed to rain or snow or have a tornado for the next couple hours, so we get some painting done here. But this was a very iffy day. Okay, the next step, I want to prep all this down. Boy, we're really looking at with this weather. I was not expecting, I had no idea I was planning on a day of rainy days and Mondays, but so we'll take advantage of this. We'll definitely get some painting done on this. Prep wall, then I'm going to tack rag it down. Hopefully, if this is our lucky day, boy, I hope it is. Get this in primer, and this is primer sealer, not auto primer. I'm still, because of all the fish eyes, I don't want to take any chances that we're going to wind up with It's the dreaded fish eyes. So there's good news and bad news. The good news, not a single fish eye. All that extensive sanding looks like it really paid off. I've got 2 more coats of primer on this, and what I think I'll do is let this dry overnight. I tried to clean up the inside as much as I could, and the reason I'm not in a rush is it looks like we're losing the weather here by the minute. So this would be a good time to let this dry overnight. It'll sand out a lot better, or if it needs any touch-ups. And even better than that, that extra drying time always works in your favor. After a nice coffee break, let's see how that's drying up. Oh, I always love coming out here. Yeah, it's the best of all worlds. The longer it dries, it's always going to work in our favor. By the way, that little brace worked out real well. And that's something I should have done right in the beginning. I don't know what I was thinking. It makes it so much easier to work on it. Now I got the workbench prepped and the floor. Gonna get ready to do this one side fairing. While we got our, the main objective of today was to get that Steve's part in primer and get it drying. I'm ready to do some paint remover. Now I've had good luck with this paint remover. This is from Lowe's. And Karen, in her generosity, she donated to me a nice pair of dishwashing gloves. You want to have heavy-duty gloves. You don't want to get this stuff on your hands, believe me. And so my old gloves, well, I'll save them for, you know, I'm not sure what we could do, if anything. But I've got 2-quart cans now that have some out of them, but I wanted to have fresh stuff, so I'll use the newest of the 2 cans. And I want to get, the whole objective here is to get the whole part coated with as few brush strokes in one direction as possible, and then let it sit about 10 minutes. Now I've tried other ways of doing this. I've tried doing it outside and hosing it off and doing all kind of stuff, but I found this to be, for my purposes, and always have newspaper on the floor, newspaper everywhere, because when you're done, this is one of the messier, not that anything you do restoring motorcycles is neat, but to turn this piece into that piece, you're looking at about, well, a lot of hours of labor, a lot of work, and probably about $10 worth of paint remover. Storing these old parts, there's really no one size fits all. What I found is, you know, a lot of parts are easier to basically just go outside and sand the paint off. We want to leave a nice thick coat on. Yeah, you don't want to have this. I can't do this when my grandson is around because he'll eat it or he'll do something. But it's nice in the summer if you can do it outside. Right now, what I'm afraid of is the really cold temperatures that we're having right now. What will happen is it'll slow down the process of making the paint soft. But the idea is to go in one direction with just one brush stroke. Don't go back and forth if possible. And I tried to figure this out years ago. What's cheaper, to do it this way or with sandpaper? With the cost of sandpaper now, about $40 for 100 sheets, this is starting to look like a better choice. But it's either way, the paint's got to come off. And there's really no easy way to do this. You know, I even thought of something at one time. Smart guy that I am. There is a furniture restoration place locally that has dip tanks. And I thought, oh boy, I'll bring down the part and have them just dip it. Well, when I got the price, after I got up off the floor, I decided to go to Lowe's and get a... Okay, that's just going to sit there now. Rather than let the camera run, just let it sit. we'll go have yet another cup of coffee and come back to this in about 10-15 minutes, and we should see how that's going to come off. Okay, 10 minutes have gone by. When you see the paint like this, you pretty much know this job is going to go pretty well. But again, if you try to take it off 1 minute after you put it on, you just make a lot of extra work for yourself. And in this case, which we don't need to make any, this work is hard enough. You don't have to figure ways to make it harder. So usually I'll start at one end. This is a dull, not a razor sharp, and I don't want to gouge it. I want to go gently. And it takes as much of the paint off as is going to come off. The last little bit you always have to get off with sandpaper or some other way, but if you can picture, you would need a lot of sandpaper to get this much paint off. So this is really stacking it in our favor more than anything else. And now I've used really aggressive, and I mean aggressive. I bought some stuff one time, actually at the airport, that's made for taking the Imran off and these really high-tech finishes that are on jet planes. And at the time I was doing a Honda 750 side cover, and it melted the plastic. But that isn't really a fair test, because back in the day of doing those older Japanese bikes, what would happen is in the 70s you would do a set of side covers, and one would have a melting issue and the other one wouldn't, even from the acrylic lacquer, the thinner of the day. So I'm not sure about the paint remover. I don't want to wreck any more parts, but it can be mystery meat. But I think the truth is, all paint work is really, it's really an art, not a science. It's really you either love it or you hate it. That's the bottom line. And all right, so rather than let the camera run here and bore everybody to death, I'm sure they're bored enough as it is. This is what we're going to be doing. We'll put a second coat on. Once I get most of this off, I'll put a second coat on. And then from that point on, I guess we're going to have to do a little sanding. For the next step, I mixed up some simple green in with the water, because I want to get whatever the residue that's still on it. This is 220 paper. And if you have old sandpaper that's still got some grit on it, you can use it up on this step, because the paper is ultimately just going to get clogged with very quickly. But I wanted to show this step is a critical step. This gets rid of any, well, let's see, it's all in the sandpaper now. So we may use up a significant amount of our old sandpaper. But I wanted to show this step. This is a critical step, because this gets rid of any of the residual paint remover that's on there, and any scratches that you may have put in from the, well, depending on how gentle you are. I'm not that gentle. Anyway, I just wanted to show that real quick. And if I can get a couple paper towels here. We are now into the gel coat with very little residual paint. We'll get that all off with sandpaper. Yes, and this is 90% of the finish. The last little bit, we got to get off with sandpaper. But getting this off, wow, this is a big saving. And you never know. Sometimes, to be honest, sometimes the paint comes right off so easy, and sometimes it doesn't come off at all. I never could figure that out. So again, this is what we started with. There's always a little, for whatever reason, and 5 minutes with the 220 and some simple green in the sanding liquid, and about 15 minutes from now that whole part should be clean. You don't really see it, but I did put a lot of time into this. And the last little thing, I want to re-radius all the edges with dry sandpaper. Find any little spots. Most important thing is the edges, that's for sure. I got most of this done with the wet sandpaper, but there's always some little area that we're going to have to touch up at some point in time. And believe it or not, it rained for about 20 minutes and it stopped. So I'm going to get this primer in the garage drying, get the first coat of primer on here. Now what I did off camera, and I've done it a million times already on these videos, is anywhere I saw a spider crack, I spread it open and put some thin CA in there. So ultimately when we sand the primer, some of those spots show and they need to be addressed. But right now, considering what we had about 3 hours ago, wow, that's going to be a good part. So despite having to work around some pretty nasty weather, we still got this done. We got our first coat of primer on this. Now I know both of these parts are going to need more sanding, more primer, and you know what happens on a job like this? You just wind up using can after can of primer, but boy, the result when it's done, it just worth every penny. And every time I look at any of the finishes that I spent a lot of time on, and I just think a day like today, you pay up front, you pay me now, you pay me later, or whatever. Anyway, hope these parts are going to dry up overnight and we'll get back to working on this tomorrow. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoy restoring these old motorcycles as much as we do. It is always a lot of fun. And thanks for watching.